Good evening. The five main political party leaders have clashed over the renewable heat incentive scheme in their last big debate before the Assembly election on Thursday. It was the first issue raised by a member of the studio audience who also posed questions about cross-community voting transfers, Brexit and whether direct rule was inevitable after the election. Our political correspondent Gareth Gordon watched the debate.
5 leaders, 2 days to go and a final opportunity to persuade voters. And soon we saw the deep divisions over the issue which caused this election, RHI.
People are absolutely angry at the arrogance, the disrespect, the contempt for the public and the fact that the DUP can't even recognise that they did something absolutely wrong.
Arrogance, disrespect and contempt, Arlene Foster.
Well, I also have to deal with the allegations of corruption as well, because of course
There's been plenty of allegations.
There's not a scintilla,
nothing more than that.
There's not a scintilla of evidence, and everybody on this platform
but plenty of allegations.
But here's the reality. Would it not have been more intelligent, would it not have been better to have had the public inquiry first and then had the election? Because then we would have had the full facts for everybody to make a judgment. Instead, what we've had is political manoeuvring by Sinn Féin. And what about a wee bit of respect, Michelle? Just saying. Just saying. What we need to do, what we need to do is to have.
The Alliance leader joined the attacks on Arlene Foster.
Because what we heard at the last election was that we needed a strong leader of unionism, but that same strong leader of unionism presided over chaos within this scheme, presided over chaos in terms of how it was handled, and didn't actually deal with
the crisis. And this is chaos with hindsight.
No, it's not chaos with hindsight, it's chaos in the here and now.
Then there was the question of the Ulster Unionist leader saying he would transfer his vote to the SDLP.
If you vote for Mike, you'll get Michelle. That's the reality. You won't get Colm, you get Michelle.
But people voted for you last time and they got Martin McGuinness, and he wrote your resignation letter.
They got...
Mike Nesbitt said he had no regrets. The SDLP leader said he'd been brave.
Arlene's unionism is so strong and so secure that she's putting out leaflets with a darkened down picture of Gerry Adams in it. She's talking about Gerry Adams more than she's talking about anything else. So these scare tactics are what people are so fed up with. They're why people are sitting at home and not voting.
Tonight,
and if people want to change that, they should vote and vote.
Change.
Thank you. Thank you for
You're also saying a vote for
any
other
mention him
unionist party is a
32
vote for
times.
Sinn Féin.
You did mention Gerry Adams 12 times and Sinn Féin 32 times in your manifesto launch speech.
Well, I haven't mentioned him. I haven't mentioned him here tonight, but thank you for doing that for me tonight, Noel. Thank you.
The Sinn Féin leader was asked who she would recommend her voters to transfer to.
So I would say to people, vote for progressive parties, vote for people that actually are true to your values, my values of equality, respect, integrity, my values of a new and agreed Ireland, my values of anti-corruption and my values of respect in government.
So I want to come back very quickly. Couple of questions. What do you have to fear from Sinn Féin?
They want to implement their radical Republican agenda, whereas I want to implement my 5-point positive plan for Northern Ireland.
This was a last opportunity for the leaders of the 5 biggest parties to engage at the end of what we were told would be a brutal campaign. Soon it will be over to the voters. Gareth Gordon, BBC Newsline, Belfast.
Also watching that debate were Jim Allister, leader of the TUV, Fiona Ferguson from People Before Profit and Stephen Agnew, leader of the Green Party. Stephen Agnew, your thoughts on the overall debate?
Well, I think what we've seen again is those parties waste the opportunity. They've wasted 10 years in government between them and they've wasted the opportunity to stabilise politics in Northern Ireland. But if you look at some of the issues that came up, RHI, the Green Party was the first party to raise the problems with RHI. We're still the only party to propose a workable solution. Transparency, we're the only party publishing all our donations over £500. And equal marriage, we were the first party to bring that forward, and we've now brought other parties with us to the point we're working on legislation together. So I think it is a shame that we weren't on the debate to make those points, but I appreciate the opportunity to do so now.
Jim Allister, many would say predictable questions. Were they predictable answers in the debate?
Yes, and I think the audience saw that there is no prospect of those 5 parties providing durable, workable, good government. Just as they've failed for the last 10 years, they will fail again. Of course, there's a fundamental reason why this system of government is failing. And it's this. Sinn Féin is not in Stormont to make Northern Ireland work. Therefore, any system that insists on holding them at the heart of government will never work. Unless we can fix that, we can't fix Stormont. And if we can't fix Stormont, what's the point in having it? But I think what we saw again tonight is that if you vote for these 5 main parties, you get more of the same, the very thing that isn't working.
Fiona Ferguson, is it same old, same old?
I think so. I think very clearly what tonight's debate reaffirmed is the need for a radical alternative. Of course, I would argue that that needs to be a radical socialist alternative, but whatever the alternative is, what we saw tonight was that all 5 of the leaders were able to be implicated in RHI, and all they could do was finger point and blame. None of them pointed to the fact that it's actually the system which is to blame because it sets up crises after crises from Red Sky to NAMA. But thankfully, people on the doorsteps and the public aren't stupid. They're not going to be duped, and they understand what parties have been propping up this system for the past 20 years, and they want to see change. And what I think was really crystal clear is where their priorities lie. Because not once tonight did we hear about the crippling austerity that has been bringing our communities to its knees for the past 10 years. But we also didn't hear about any sort of solution for the housing crisis nor the healthcare crisis that faces most people in this country.
A radical alternative, Jim Allister, that could be in vote transfer, did come up in the debate, cross-community vote transfer. For the record, where will your choices go on the ballot paper?
Well, I think Mike Nesbitt has lost his way on this matter, and I think many of his supporters are dismayed at what has been said. I'm a unionist, unapologetically, so I would urge my supporters to vote for other unionist candidates before they even think of voting for anyone else.
Including the DUP, 3 candidates in North Antrim.
Yes, whatever my disagreement with other unionists, I want to see a unionist majority in Stormont, and therefore I want people to use their transfers. I, of course, urge them to recognise that in voting for the TUV, you get unrelenting, unflinching opposition to Sinn Féin 24/7, not just at election time. It seems if you vote for the Ulster Unionists first, you then get the SDLP, and of course if you vote for the DUP, you get their partner, Sinn Féin, as joint First Minister. And tonight, you know, we again had shadows of the scaremongering. You know, Ari Foster must think that people she can take them for fools. If the DUP, the party that brought Sinn Féin into government, the party that sat with them as joint First Minister for 10 years, if she can think that she can convince them that voting DUP is the way to stop Sinn Féin, they are the very people who have made Sinn Féin at the heart of government, the system that isn't working. And, you know, if you're anti-Sinn Féin, then it's TUV you should be voting.
Stephen Agnew, many people see the Green Party as a party for change when it comes to transfers. How should your supporters follow your lead in the constituency that you're standing in North Stormont?
It was almost 20 years ago that David Trimble shook John Hume's hand, and we were led to believe that we were going to get cross-community politics. Say almost 20 years on, and somehow this idea you should transfer across community is progress. We haven't moved in 20 years if we still view our politics through the prism of nationalism and unionism. If people want cross-community politics, they need to vote for cross-community parties such as the Green Party. That's the only way we're really going to move forward. It's not about somehow, Mike, you take the Protestant vote, and Colm, you take the Catholic vote. It's about stopping thinking about Northern Ireland as 2 communities and think of us as one diverse society.
Fiona Ferguson, our reporters have discovered a lot of apathy and anger on the doorsteps. What have you found? Is your party, when people vote for you, if they vote for you, is that about policies, or are you a party of protest?
No, well, I think that what we proved in the last election by topping the poll in West Belfast is that we're not just a party of protest. People vote for us because they want to see an alternative kind of society, and that has only, again, I say, be reaffirmed this election. When you say that your reporters have felt anger on the doorsteps, I've never experienced anything like it. When we've been canvassing North Belfast, we have got people who have been voting for the same parties for up to 20 years and won't do it again, and I'm really glad to see that people want to see that kind of change, and I think that the big parties will take a kick it in this election. But you asked the other 2 people in the panel who
so
they would vote for.
Therefore, if you're looking for change, were you putting your transfers on your ballot paper?
Well, I'll be voting as left as possible. I'm yet to make my mind up on exactly what parties I will vote for, but I would encourage people to vote as left as possible and vote as progressive as possible when that comes to, for example, a woman's right to choose, when that comes to equal marriage, when that comes to things like an Irish Language Act. Vote for parties that will put those things as a red line issue.
Stephen Agnew, the Electoral Office is reporting tonight a drop of 2.14% in the number of people actually registered to vote this time around. How can you convince voters then to vote at all, if not for your party?
Well, there's two issues there. I think one is the difficulty of registering to vote in Northern Ireland. It's unnecessarily complex, and every year there are problems with registration for many of my constituency anyway. I think the other thing is then those who are registered, will they come out? And whilst people feared that with it being a snap election only 10 months after the last one, that people wouldn't come out, my experience in the doors is people are angry. They are wanting to register a protest against those who've wasted their opportunities in government. And they are coming out to vote for alternatives such as the Green Party.
Jim Allister, you say this current devolved power sharing arrangement is simply not working. If that's the case, then why should people return you to your seat in North Antrim?
Well, I think because I have been the thorn in the side of the misrule at Stormont, and I think people want to sharpen that thorn, and they can do that by voting TV across the country on Thursday, and I believe many will. Because
so what would be your top priority then?
My
if
top
you're elected?
priority would be to fix Stormont, to get rid of the absurdity of mandatory coalition, which pitches together parties without having to be agreed about anything, and therefore when in government it all falls apart. We can't go on like this. You know, we have to get government, and if we can't fix Stormont, then we need to move to a situation where we put in the British ministers, but keep the Assembly as the body through which they pass their laws, so that we have some modicum of control.
You were talking
over
about
this.
on your election pamphlet that I read, a coalition of the willing rather
Yes.
than a mandatory coalition.
Absolutely.
So who would you go into coalition
Well,
with?
I would never be going into government with Sinn Féin, because Sinn Féin's in the business of destroying Northern Ireland. I'm in the business of preserving and making Northern Ireland a success. But other parties who recognise the need to make a success of Northern Ireland, I would have no difficulty working with in the common good and in the common interest. But of that sort, if we can't fix Stormont in that way, away from mandatory coalition to a coalition of the willing, then we have to face reality. It's not working, and we can't stay like this. My goodness, in 4 weeks we don't even have a budget.
Okay, Fiona Ferguson, your top priority if elected, and your party's?
Well, our priority is always to fight against the austerity that's been forced on people for 10 years now and more. We want to see an end to privatisation within our healthcare system. We want to see housing properly delivered. It's been 10 years of broken promises around housing, and the communities for one won't stand against it. In this election alone, there have been, I know of, 3 local protests organised across North Belfast of people standing up against the housing crisis that's going on. Those kind of things are exactly what we would address, and I think going forward, we can't just say we're anti-austerity and then implement austerity. We can't just say that we want to see the rights of others respected and then not respect the rights of others going forward. We need to see parties being elected and the role really of the small party being, as Jim says, the thorn in the side of the bigger parties, and that's what we'll do after this election when we're returned.
Stephen Agnew, if you're elected, what's your top priority?
The absolute priority has to be getting the budget in place, because if we do not, we'll see £600 million of extra cuts to our health service, extra cuts to our education system, and these are already crumbling under Tory austerity. But Jim is right that we do need to fix Stormont, but not by ceding power to Westminster, but actually giving more power to our citizens, who in very many issues are ahead of many of the politicians. What we need is a constitutional convention to review, reform and revitalise the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement was called the People's Agreement, but politicians have taken the power and guarded it jealously. It's time to give that power back to our citizens, and only they can move us forward.
Stephen, Jim Allister, Stephen Agnew and Fiona Ferguson, thank you for joining me. In other news, relatives of a murder victim sobbed in court today as a teenager accused of the killing appeared in the dock. 19-year-old Rhys McGee denies murdering Richard Miskelly outside a house in Newtownards on Sunday. Sarah Neal reports.
Richard Miskelly died after he was attacked close to the Bangor Road in Newtownards. Police received reports of an assault outside this house in the early hours of Sunday morning. Paramedics had tried to resuscitate the 24-year-old, but he died at the scene. Rhys McGee from Carrowdore Road in the Ards Peninsula is accused of his murder and of perverting the course of justice. Newtownards Magistrates Court heard claims he spoke to a witness saying, "You got home an hour before me, you didn't see anything."
Some of Mr Miskelly's relatives sobbed in the public gallery as the court heard that the incident began in the early hours of Sunday morning when the victim was asked to leave a house on the Bangor Road. He was then pursued and assaulted. The defence solicitor said that his client had administered CPR to the victim and had helped the emergency services. Mr McGee's solicitor said that when the murder charge was put to his client in custody, he said, "I did not murder Richard Miskelly and I'm very sorry for his family." He added that he was definitely not guilty of the charge of perverting the course of justice.
He's been remanded in custody. Sarah Neal, BBC Newsline, Newtownards.
The family of Lisa Dorrian has appealed directly to the person who was with her when she died to help them find her body. The 25-year-old from Bangor is believed to have been murdered. She disappeared on this day 12 years ago. In an emotional video message, her father and sisters are appealing for information. Catherine Morrison reports.
Lisa Dorrian, as her family remember her, beautiful, funny and loving. The 25-year-old disappeared 12 years ago today after a party at this caravan site in Ballyhalbert on the Ards Peninsula. The police believe she was murdered. Now her father and two sisters are appealing specifically to the person who was with her when she died.
She thought you were her friend. Lisa trusted you. Think back to that night. I'm sure it's not hard to do. It mustn't ever be far from your thoughts. Think about what happened when Lisa died, how you panicked and made a decision that would change your life and our lives forever. Then think of Lisa.
Despite nearly 300 searches over the last 12 years, Lisa's body has not been found. The police investigation has identified thousands of potential witnesses, and 8 people have been arrested on suspicion of murder, although no one has ever been charged in connection with her death. Lisa's mother died in 2015. Her grandmother passed away 2 weeks ago.
One of the last things Nanny said to me as she was leaving this earth was that Lisa was at the end of her bed and was waiting with her. Our Nanny and Mum now have the answers we're trying to find, but you can help us find Lisa in this life, not the next.
We all think of Lisa every day. I'm sure you do too. Just tell us where she is. It's never too late to tell us. A place is all we need. Please help yourself by easing your conscience. Tell us where Lisa is.
The police have stressed this remains a live investigation and want anyone with information to contact them. Catherine Morrison, BBC Newsline.
A 42-year-old man has been arrested by detectives investigating an explosion at Palace Barracks in Hollywood in August 2015. The device detonated inside a postal delivery van and damaged 2 cars. No one was injured. Returning to politics, and the Ulster Unionist Party has said it's to write to the head of the civil service, questioning comments made by Stormont's most senior health official, Richard Pengelly, who is the husband of a DUP candidate. He raised concerns about health staff posting political comments on social media during the election. Also today, Sinn Féin have defended a decision by an election candidate to distribute a letter on party-headed notepaper to the parents of school children. Here's our political correspondent, Stephen Walker.
In the battle for votes and in the heat of an election campaign, social media is a vital tool, but it needs caution. Richard Pengelly is the Permanent Secretary at the Department of Health. He's Stormont's most senior health official. The husband of DUP candidate Emma Little Pengelly, he put on record his concerns about health staff tweeting during the election campaign. He wrote that while staff are clinically independent, they must remember they are health staff. He said he was concerned about the overtly political tweets from colleagues across the service. He added that it was particularly relevant during the election. He said that such public statements were not appropriate. But his comments have been criticised.
I'm worried if it's considered that doctors and nurses can't have political opinions. I'm worried if they can't have an opinion on the health service, which we all know gives us huge concern. So I think there's an issue there.
The Ulster Unionists say they're to write to the head of the civil service questioning whether Mr Pengelly's comments were appropriate. They've also accused Mr Pengelly of hypocrisy, saying he was pictured last year congratulating his wife winning a seat for the DUP. Meanwhile, Sinn Féin have defended a decision by Michelle Gildernew, an election candidate, to distribute a letter on party-headed notepaper to the parents of school children. The letter, produced in today's Belfast Telegraph, was brought home by children attending the St Francis Primary School in Derry Latany in County Tyrone. Sinn Féin say it was part of Michelle Gildenew's campaign to secure better broadband. However, the letter prompted one parent to seek legal advice.
This isn't about a particular party. This is about children, the most vulnerable and the youngest in society, at primary school, after all, being given material of a party political nature. It's not about any party in particular. It's about children being used or exploited in this manner.
Sinn Féin say the letter was about trying to get better services.
Broadband's a major issue for people in rural areas, a big bugbear, an issue which Michelle has campaigned on for many years, and the party has as a whole. Michelle is a parent of a child who attends that school, and I'm sure she was raising the issue with the rest of the parents to pick it up as trying to get their support because we need to deliver a lot more for rural citizens.
A spokesperson for the Council for Catholic Maintained Schools said they, nor the school, have received any complaints. Stephen Walker, BBC Newsline.
The GAA has submitted a new planning application for a stadium at Casement Park in West Belfast. It would have a capacity of just over 34,000, down by almost 4,000 on the original plan. But some residents remain opposed to the development, as Rick Farragher reports.
This was the design unveiled by the GAA last October. Today's plan hasn't yet been made public, but the organisation says it's only marginally different, with a capacity reduced further to just over 34,000, 8,500 of those standing. October's design had its height, scale and capacity all reduced from a previous design. The GAA says that today's plans have also received a positive report from the Safety Technical Group, which advises on the construction of new stadiums in Northern Ireland.
It's been very, very important for the GAA to ensure that, from our point of view, that we're top of the class in relation to safety. We see that as very much paramount, and in relation to both the planning application and the safety situation, we believe that we're well in excess of where you normally would be associated to be at this stage of the process.
But not everyone's convinced. Some residents say plans for a stadium with a capacity that's greater than 25,000 raise numerous concerns about safety and infrastructure.
We do not want to see a stadium of that capacity in the area. We want to see a stadium in the range 20 to 25,000. That is the capacity that we believe is suitable given the traffic impacts and given also concerns around emergency exiting.
Residents say the proposed plan is simply too big, while the GAA says that a new stadium would bring regeneration and a sporting legacy to the area. However this issue is resolved will only become clear in the coming months. Rick Farragher, BBC Newsline in West Belfast.
Well, it may be the official last day of winter, but there's still some wintry weather about. The latest forecast now from Barabest.
Hello there. We hold on to a handful of showers through tonight. They may turn a little bit wintry as temperatures fall to freezing and below. Where that happens, we are likely to see some frost and possibly some stretches of ice by morning as well. So a chilly start, but overall not too bad a day. It won't be quite as wet as today and there will be some sunshine. It also marks the first day of spring, at least in the weather world. Some of us follow the ancient Celtic calendar. So for them, it started on St Bridget's Day. For the astronomers, we have another few weeks to wait. The 20th of March marks the spring equinox. Those are the spring start dates. You pick whichever one you want to follow. As for tomorrow, a bit of a chilly start, the odd shower out there, but there will be some sunny gaps coming and going, and that will continue right through the day. And not a bad start across Britain and Ireland, apart from the odd scattered shower. It's this next weather system which will be pushing in. It will be affecting some southern areas of Ireland at first, into parts of Wales in central and southern England, gradually drifting its way northwards. And for most of us, temperatures will reach about 7 to 8 degrees, with a few scattered showers and sunnier spells the further north you are. So for us into the middle of the afternoon, the winds will be light and temperatures should reach 7 or 8 degrees with the odd shower out there. But by tomorrow evening, the cloud is going to thicken up from the south as we see this rain pushing in. And some of that could be a little bit wintry tomorrow evening as well, especially over the tops of the hills and the mountains. And with more cloud around tomorrow night, it's not going to be quite as chilly or as frosty. And apart from a few scattered showers around on Thursday, there will be some sunny gaps to enjoy as well.
And that's it for now. Our next BBC Newsline is at 6:25 in the morning during breakfast here on BBC One. From me, good night.